Please tell us a little about yourself and what motivated you to run for office.
Well, I'm passionate about the kids in Lee Summit and the educational opportunities for the kids. I've lived in Lee Summit a little over 20 years now, raised two boys through the Lee Summit R7 school district, both graduated from Lee Summit High School. And during that time, I did a lot of volunteer work, both in the community and in the school district, whether it was working in the classroom, going on field trips, working with the PTA groups, but I have just loved every minute of that. I loved working with the teachers. I loved working with the students. I loved working and meeting with other parents, as well as the administrators, all the support staff that did all the hard work to help us do all of our activities and things. So I just enjoyed meeting and working with all those folks, and always with the view in mind of how it benefited, how the work we were doing benefited our kids and their education.
Okay. What experiences have helped you prepare for the professionalism and leadership required of school board members?
Well, in my career, in my professional life, I'm a program manager in information technology. And so certainly working in that environment, we're working to implement large-scale projects, working with vendors, working with contracts, working with project teams, and working hard to make sure that we remove barriers and that we get the projects implemented successfully. I also work to plan strategically with executives to ensure that their strategic plans are supported with the technology projects that we're going to be implementing as well. And then in my volunteer work, sitting on boards, whether it's in the Homeowners Association, whether it's the PTSA board at the high school, working with other people and building consensus and collaborating with folks is critical to governance and success. And so definitely I have spent a lot of time, thinking about preparing for meetings, thinking about who to talk with ahead of meetings so that we can get some alignment and agreement, and how we negotiate those things and remove barriers so that we can make forward progress.
Okay. How does our district maintain and continue to improve its services and reputation?
Well, I think, last year we talked a little bit about maintain. I like the word grow. And I think that is where we've seen so much growth in educational opportunities. When we think about how things have changed from when we were in grade school, there were 20, 25 desks in the room. You sat at your desk, you had your book, the teacher told you this is, how the world works. You learned it, you took your tests, and that was learning. And now kids learn in so many different ways that we've got to meet them where they're at so that they're learning and growing on how to be critical thinkers. It's not just about, what's my career going to be like in 5 years? It's what's the world going to be like in 20 years. And we've got to prepare our students for that.
Okay. The R7 district bylaws clearly define the relationship between school board and R7 staff. Please describe how you envision your working relationship with staff.
Well, certainly staff provides great information and research on all of the things that the board is evaluating and approving and voting on. So definitely from an input standpoint, they're providing all of that great research, their great knowledge, and looking across the nation at what other school districts are doing as well to provide that input. The superintendent, of course, is who reports to the board. So the superintendent manages that staff and works with that staff, and we're the oversight board to the superintendent, how he or she is performing, and how the district overall is performing, as well as the staff that reports to him.
Okay. Please summarize your qualifications and level of financial expertise appropriate to govern an approximate $300 million school district budget.
Well, I spoke a little bit about my work life and definitely looking at not only project budgets, but in different roles where I've had divisions that I've run, looking at both our capital and our operating budgets as well, and making sure that we're meeting and on top of budget targets and that we're constantly evaluating that to improve. And then on my different volunteer roles, so working on the homeowners association, we had to make tough decisions about how we were going to maintain our, the area that we served, our homeowners area. And so budgets are very critical there. I really value having strong accounting folks to leverage and learn from and lean on. I've always been pretty fortunate that in all of my leadership roles, I've had good treasurers or I've had good legal folks. I can pick up the phone and call and say, I'm a little concerned about this from a legal standpoint. Can you walk me through some options here? And so leveraging other people's expertise has helped me build my own financial expertise. And so certainly looking at the school board budget, I understand what those targets are. I understand how the money works and the money has to move around. I'm excited about some additional learning with the Missouri School Board Association to help me better understand school district budgeting and finance. But I think we have a good person in that role right now that's helping the current board walk through that. I'm excited about the bond initiative coming forward, and so I think from a financial standpoint, we see where we've got to make some capital investments, and we need to do it now.
Okay. What is your approach to conflict resolution among board members?
I'm a big believer on strategic planning. And, in talking to some folks in the district, it's my understanding that the current strategic plan, which ends 2021, has been a book that's sat up on the shelf and is pretty dusty. And I think we need a strategic plan that we bring to every meeting, and it's our guiding post. And if we can do that, if we can agree on strategically where we need to go, then we can talk through any barriers. I'm a good listener, and I ask sometimes some tough questions, but I want to understand if there's conflict. I want to understand where the two parties are coming from and see if we can't get some alignment about where we need to go.
Okay. Please describe a group deliberation experience in which you held a minority opinion but were ultimately successful in reaching a consensus.
Well, I will tell you, as a program manager or project manager, it's really my role to stay pretty neutral. But I can also tell you, based on my experience, a lot of times I know where we need to take this and where we need to go. And so, again, listening to folks' input and evaluating that input will then help me build the case for why we need to go a different direction. So recently, I had a pretty tough project. It happens pretty frequently that you get a tough assignment, and this was a tough one. And what I found was beneficial was if I could get everybody to focus on what the risks to the organization were and what their risk acceptance was. So what risk they were willing to take on versus where they wanted risk avoidance, then we were able to come to the consensus to move forward on certain parts of the project and to delay some other parts, which was my overall goal. But we had to really get focused on risk versus reward.
Okay. Please explain the roles of district leadership, superintendent, and school board with respect to the broader community.
Well, I'm a big person that focuses on communication and transparency. So in any role that I've had, I've wanted to engage with people, and I believe very strongly that this school board needs a strategic communication plan that's actionable, and it needs to be engaging the community at all levels. I think we've seen some really good examples. The CFMP program, when it came out and they were engaging people at every school, they planned meetings at different parts of the community. They invited people in. There was great information on the website. They were tweeting out information. So they were listening in. There were surveys going on. They were listening in and they were reaching out. And I thought that was a great example of how to engage the whole community. Whether you had kids in the district or not, they wanted people to have that information and know the options that were being discussed. And I think they did a really good job with that. And I believe strongly in that level of engagement on every single item that we're working on.
Okay. Current data provided by our school district shows certain subsets of students are underperforming in math, science, and other categories. How do you interpret the data and propose the LSR7 board address it?
Well, we know that there's an equity plan that's been approved by the board, and I absolutely support analyzing data to continue to evaluate where those gaps are and how we address those, whether it's racial inequity, whether it's disability learning inequity, whether it's a poverty issue. We've got to evaluate all of those different areas and figure out how we're going to close those gaps. Because what's critical for a public school system is that we're meeting kids, like I mentioned, where they're at, and we're helping them close those gaps on every single level.
Okay. What do you consider major challenges and priorities for the district, and how will you address?
Well, I think some of the priorities that we really need to look at is keeping our promises right now. We've made a lot of commitments with CFMP Phase 2, with the equity plan, with the portrait of a graduate. There are a lot of commitments made on the table. With this bond initiative, we're going to be making a lot of promises around facilities and what we're doing and where we're making changes. We've got to make sure that we hold everyone accountable in those roles, including the board members, to make sure that we deliver on all these promises. And then next, we've got to look at planning for the future. I'm very concerned that we don't have a strategic plan that we're using. And I mean in every meeting, that the teachers know what that strategic plan is, that the students know what that strategic plan is, and every administrator as well. Because it's got to guide our decisions on where we're taking every decision. Then we also need that transparency that I talked about. We've got to have a communication plan that's strategic and engages the entire community. And the last item I think that's really important is we're making a lot of changes. We've got to really be conscious and thinking about how we help people in the community work through that change model. We all know how social media works, and we have all seen it in this community. And if people have all the facts that we're sharing out, and we're doing a good job listening to feedback and modifying around that, then we're going to be successful.
Okay. What do you believe should be a primary focus of the school board, and how your role as a board member?
I think it's getting that focus on strategic and long-term view. I think that's really critical. I'd also like to see the board focus on collaboration and working through barriers to come to a good consensus moving forward.
Okay. What is your long-term vision for the district?
Boy, that's an open book, right? That's
That's
something
the last
that,
question.
Yeah. Well, we could spend hours on that then. Let's talk. I'm excited. I'm excited about all the different options with the learning environments that we're looking at, that we're letting kids really move in a way that they can learn better, and we're working on meeting those learning needs. I'm just excited about that. I'm excited about all the opportunities, whether it's the Stansberry Leadership Center or whether we're thinking about the technology programs that we're going to improve and implement. I think we've got to give kids lots of options so that they can really see where their strengths are and grow those, and really help them where they have gaps and weaknesses, build on those as well.
Okay. Kathy, you got about 14 minutes.
All right.
Talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Okay.
You don't have to, but
Well, do you have any questions for me? I know we met last year. I'm excited to be here again. I really would like your support in this election. There are 9 darn candidates. And and that's a lot of folks to talk with and determine, where the strengths are for this school board and where we're going to take this school board and engagement with the city. And so what questions do you have for me?
we don't. No,
All right.
No,
Then I'll just keep talking.
Yeah.
I do think a big area that I'd like to see an improvement on is our engagement between the school district and the school board and the city leadership and the strategic planning for the city. I was excited about Ignite. I think it's an awesome plan. It's got awesome tenants, and it's great that the city is looking for that. I think that's where the school board needs to step in and partner with the city and make sure that if we're growing the city and we're growing housing and we're growing all these things, that by golly, we're planning for how the school board's going to grow that district and meet all the needs for all those kids that are going to be relying on us for an excellent education and opportunity. And so I'm really focused on where we take that partnership. I was in the meeting recently, the shared meeting I sat in with the school board and city leaders. And I think the thing that that really resonated with me was somebody mentioned, well, maybe, we should think about some of these developers, also helping with land for schools. I thought that's a little passive. I'm a little more aggressive about that. If we're going to build new subdivisions, let's think about how we're going to build the new schools to support the kids that are going to school there. And so that's got to be a partnership between the city and the school board.